Hello friends, Janice Mitchell, pelvic health physical therapist. Today we are talking about urge urinary incontinence. And what is that? So basically that's where you feel a really strong urge to pee and you dribble a little bit on the way to the bathroom and you don't make it quite in time. So let's say you're out and about and you're running errands and you see that sign for a toilet. And you didn't need to go before you saw that sign. But then when you saw that sign, you're like, oh, your bladder is like, let's go. So you've got to run to the bathroom. And maybe you dribble a little bit on the way there, or maybe you dribble a little bit as you're pulling down your pants. Okay, so that's one scenario. Another scenario may be that you're in the grocery store and you're in the freezer aisle. So you're going along and then you feel like, that bladder spasming. I feel that really strong urge to urinate. And sometimes cold can do that to the bladder. And then, okay, you hear it. So you're running, trying to get to the bathroom in time, and you dribble a little bit on the way there. Another common scenario is in the kitchen. So let's say you're washing dishes and you have your hands, you're standing at the counter, you've been on your feet all day, and you're washing those dishes. And then you feel just this strong urge to urinate. And again, you're on your way to the bathroom, but you have a little bit that dribbles out while you're there or while you're pulling down your pants, and it doesn't make it quite to the toilet. Last scenario is, let's say you're driving home, pull into the driveway, get out of the car, you're walking up to that front door, and bam, you're like, I've got to go to the bathroom. And you didn't really need to go before. And you're hurrying, putting that key in the door or unlocking so that you can quickly get to that toilet so that you don't leak on the way there or while you're pulling down your pants. So again, that is called urge urinary incontinence. And I'm here because I have had urge urinary incontinence. I am now the boss of my bladder, and I want you to be the boss of your bladder. And there's a couple pretty simple things that can help you be the boss of your bladder. Before we start talking about that, let's go over bladder anatomy. Your bladder is kind of like a water balloon. So as it fills, as you're drinking throughout the day, it's slowly filling up like this balloon. The more you drink, the bigger it gets. What's keeping that pee inside? Well, you have walls and fascia that's kind of like a spider web that's helping to support the tissue. The biggest thing here are your pelvic floor muscles. So pretend like my fingers here are the pelvic floor muscles, and this is the outlet. So bladder is here. This is called the urethra. This is where pee exits, and then your pelvic floor muscles are helping to keep that pee outlet closed. So look at what happens when my pelvic floor muscles release. Woo! Pee is coming out, right? Okay, so that's the basic anatomy of the bladder and the pelvic floor muscles. Now we're going to add one other muscle. Before we add that muscle, I need to tell you the pelvic floor muscles are voluntary, which means you can squeeze them, you can train them, you can do exercises to help them do their job. Healthy pelvic floor muscles do the right thing at the right time. Because we need these pelvic floor muscles to release, right? When we're trying to pee, we want those pelvic floor muscles to release. We don't want them contracted all the time. All right, so the second muscle that we're going to talk about, here's a bladder, and then you have a muscle called the detrusor muscle. Some people also call it the bladder muscle, and it wraps around the outside of the bladder, kind of like the shower cap. And what the detrusor does is that when it's time to urinate, this muscle actually squeezes the bladder to help push that pee out. And this is a healthy thing. We want this to happen. So when it's not time to pee, we want the pelvic floor muscles around the outlet to be strong, right? We need them to be healthy and have good tone. to keep that outlet closed. But when, and the, I'm sorry, the bladder on the outside, the bladder muscle, the detrusor, is relaxed. So when it's not time to pee, pelvic floor muscles are engaged and detrusor muscle out here is relaxed. Now, when it is time to pee, we need the pelvic floor muscles to relax, to let that pee come out, and we need this muscle on the outside of the bladder to squeeze, to push that pee out. And that is the basic mechanics of how the pelvic floor muscles, the bladder, and the bladder muscle called the detrusor work together. What happens with urge urinary incontinence is that this muscle, this detrusor muscle, starts to squeeze when we don't want it to, okay? So that may be when we're in the freezer aisle of the grocery store. That muscle is squeezing and we don't want to pee when we're in the grocery aisle, okay? Or maybe when we're almost home. That muscle is starting to anticipate, like, okay, I'm almost there. I'm going to start squeezing. And so that muscle squeezing and the pelvic floor muscles don't have the power, the coordination, or the support to counteract that squeezing. So, two key things that can really help with that scenario, the urge urinary incontinence. Number one is pelvic floor muscle training. And there's an exercise called the pelvic brace. The pelvic brace is a combined contraction of your core. It's working that pelvic floor from below, it's working your deep abdominals, and it's working your diaphragm, your breathing muscle on top. And so when we exhale and activate, we are working that pelvic floor and those deep abdominals and the diaphragm together. And I love to use a party blower to demonstrate this, okay? So take a deep breath in, and then you exhale. That's step one. Step two, we're gonna add in the pelvic floor muscles. Deep breath in, exhale, activate. We're lifting that pelvic floor at the same time. And then step three, deep breath in, exhale, activate. So I know that takes some coordination, but that step three is engaging those deep abdominals too. The pelvic floor muscles are part of your core. And so any exercise can be a pelvic floor exercise. So let's say I want to train my pelvic floor muscles while I'm also doing some arm exercises. So I can do, so every time I'm blowing out and raising my arms, I'm also lifting my pelvic floor and pulling my deep abdominals in. So that's number one, pelvic floor muscle training, teaching your pelvic floor muscles to do the right thing at the right time. Pelvic floor physical therapy and occupational therapy, we're experts in this. We can assess your pelvic floor muscles and help you if do-it-yourself hasn't gotten you to where you want to be. The second tip is the pelvic bra, okay? The pelvic bra provides perineal compression. What is perineal compression? Here's our anatomy. Pubic bone in the front, tailbone, and the spine in the back. Here are your pelvic floor muscles at the bottom. This is the clitoris in front, right there. Then we have the urethral outlet where pee exits. We have the vaginal canal where vaginal deliveries, menstrual blood would come out. And then we have the anal canal, and this would be where poop and gas come out. Okay, so perineal compression is basically taking a hand and gently pressing up on that perineum. You're lifting that perineum. And a lot of times people are doing perineal compression on their own. They've kind of self-discovered that perineal compression helps. And if you have any doubt about this, look at children, okay? So when they need to go to the bathroom and they're trying to hold it, what are they doing? They're crossing their legs and they're holding themselves. That's perineal compression, okay? So the pelvic bra helps it's a hold it helper. So the pelvic bra is invisible support, and it's lifting that perineum from below. You can't see the panty lines in the back, and it's giving a nice lift to that tissue. So next time, if you have this urge urinary incontinence, I want you to try, like, do it yourself, like a self check. Take your hand and lift it, gently press up and in on that perineum, and see if that helps your urge urinary incontinence. Are you able to hold it longer? So pelvic floor muscle training and pelvic bra perineal compression. Those are two huge things that can help with urge urinary incontinence. I'm going to give you one more bonus here. I want you to think about this bladder muscle, the detrusor that wraps around the bladder. Sometimes the things that we eat and drink can also irritate this bladder muscle, and I'm happy to do a whole video on that. But if you see that there's a pattern, like let's say you had a Coke and it has that carbonation, it has caffeine, it has food coloring, it has extra sugar. So all of these things are potential bladder irritants that make that bladder want to squeeze when we don't want it to squeeze. And so if you kind of think, like, look at yourself. Is there a pattern? When you drink or eat something that might be a bladder irritant, does that cause your bladder to squeeze and feel that urge to go and maybe even leaking on the way there? Okay, so that's the end of this video. Pelvic floor muscle training, perineal compression, and bonus is bladder irritants. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to link some handouts below and some resources, and let me know what other videos you'd like me to make, because it's kind of fun. I love to connect with you, and I want you to be the boss of your bladder, because there's so many things that you can do. It increases your confidence, it increases your quality of life, and the things that you do. Take care. Bye-bye.